Three, two, one. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DCA. I'm a little bit in transit myself, so apologies for any background noise. I'm here joined by, of course, Ben from Into the Cryptoverse and Rob from Digital Asset News. How are you guys today?
Great.
Great.
Good, thanks for having us.
Well, you got your new mic. Your mic is sounding really good. Rob, you were missing a mic last time we spoke. Got lost in transit. Correct? You guys hear me?
Yeah,
Good.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, let's just jump in and talk about the first topic of the day. Obviously, markets are rough. Sometimes, well, before I jump in, quick promotion. Links are below for Ben's channel and Rob's channel. Make sure you subscribe. I know this original crew, the hardcore crew, is already all subscribed, but any new people, please make sure you do that. Let's talk about topic number one, the roller coaster today. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. The violent swings in the market, I mean, especially in the equity market, is something like I've not seen this before. Just like literally one day up, next day down, one morning opens weak, closes strong, next day crashes again, etc. And if you miss earnings, you get punished. But let's talk about crypto first. What do you guys see in this roller coaster? And is anything surprising you right now from the market action out there? I'll give that to Ben first.
No, I don't really think it's that surprising. I think there's actually a big battle going on right now between the bulls and the bears. The bulls trying to hold the higher lows, the bears trying to put in a lower low. But I think a lot of the pressure is just coming from our risk-off environment. And, you know, like I could try to come up with a narrative as to, you know, why things are the way they are. But really, just the truth is that markets remain risk-off, and we're just getting a lot of volatility because people are, you know, there are some people that are, of course, buying for the long term. Obviously, one great thing about a bear market is that it gives you great prices later on, right? Bear markets are really the time to really sit down and focus. But as long as we watch things like, you know, the US dollar continue to rally, I mean, I get that it's going up against a basket of other fiat currencies, so the relevance of it is always constantly called into question. But when you see something like that going parabolic, it historically has meant that we are risk off. And if we're risk off, then, you know, we're again fighting people who are trying to go to the relative safety of, say, fiat currency, which is somewhat, I mean, again, it's somewhat comical because of the fact that we know fiat ultimately just trends towards zero. But I think the problem is in the short term, people are just looking for a safe haven until the Fed pivots. One thing I would like to, you know, to remind people about with regards to the, you know, to the volatility is, you know, we just saw that, you know, the United States GDP went down year over year in Q1. And so if it happens again in Q2, then, you know, they'll call it a recession. But do remember that the stock market and crypto, you know, a lot of these things, they recover. Like markets recover before the economy does. Okay. So what I'm sort of thinking is the next few months are going to be a continuation of what we've been seeing for the last few months, a lot of volatility up and down. And then eventually the Fed will likely have to pivot at some point, and then we might resume our uptrend. But in the meantime, I see a continuation of more of the same.
Good stuff. How about you, Rob? What do you see?
I see. Well, first of all, I don't know how you traders do it. I don't know how you guys look at all these markets and go, you know what? I'm going to get in, I'm going to get out, get in, get out. It seems like a lot of stress. You guys must be like under an enormous amount of stress. Because when I see these things, I just sit back and I go, God dang, I am so glad that I don't have to deal with all that stuff. I know like a lot of you people that are watching the video, you got in 2021. And we were just talking about this, you know, behind the scenes before we did this video, where Ben said, you know what, this year, I mean, it's a sucky year, but it's not as bad as 2018. 2018 was awful. And when I went through that, and I just said, you know what, I'm just going to keep dollar cost averaging, just keep going through. The reason why, like a lot of the people you see on YouTube are pretty much like, well, it's up or it's down. It's because they've been in this game for a long time. So you've been in since 2021. Yeah, it sucks. And I know that everything that we see, I mean, Jerome Powell and the Fed meetings are going to come out next week, and then we're going to see another one in June, then we're going to see another one in August. and it's just going to be a continuous cycle. So expect, and we'll talk about this in a bit, expect the market to continue to be volatile, and you're going to get punished, and it's going to keep going again and again. No one said it's going to be easy. And I know like a lot of people don't like to hear those things, but it is the truth, and that's what it is. So if you're a trader, I mean, my hat's off to you, but it's got to be tough. And just expect, I don't see us doing any kind of rally anytime soon. But last thing I will say is that there's a bull run somewhere. The trick is finding those cryptos that are actually moving up, and we talk about those later.
James, I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're dead right, and it's very important to be on the bus at the right time, because at least over the last 12, 13 years of Bitcoin, only 90 days matter. That's all as we go forward. So let's, and one point you mentioned, Ben, which is super interesting, is the fact that, I don't know what's going on with my camera. I think I got some type of solar glare. I don't know, tissue. Anyway, is, people are scrambling now to store their money in fiat to get that 2% interest when it's debasing by 18% or 20%. And that's just, I find comical. Even gold is getting hit too as well. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about some positive news, because we are the Hopium channel. I'm only kidding. But in reality, it was this guy, Tidal Wave, as the title of this video. Sam Bankman-Fried came out, and he had some very positive things to say. And he is, at least in my opinion, probably the smartest guy under 30 after Benjamin Cohen. No, he's probably over 30, but if he was, at least close to that age group. Now, he did say there are a ton of what he called great white whale of institutional buyers yet to come beyond Do Kwon and other stablecoin protocols and DAO treasuries that are beginning to become Bitcoin backed as they go forward. Now, Sam Bankman-Fried said on this podcast there's a huge tidal wave of money coming into the space. Now, the money is coming because he believes regulation is getting better, and it's making big strides going forward. Now, he's also very skeptical that the SEC will ever allow institutions to invest in altcoins, like you name it out there. But he does believe in the very bullish thesis for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they will get the green light from regulators. So what do you guys see there, and do you think that's positive? I know, Rob, to you first, when I say the money's coming, institutional money's coming, we've seen some of it in Q1, but according to Sam, a ton is coming, and he has his fingers on the tabs. I mean, top money center banks go and talk to him on a daily basis. What do you guys reckon? Rob, first.
Let me say this one. So, like, every time you would say that, James, on the channel, I'd be like, okay, let's see when this big money's coming in. And at first, I was like, oh, I don't really see it. But then, I mean, you keep saying it. You do make some good points. And then also, I had Steve Ehrlich, the CEO of Voyager, on. I asked him the same question. I go, man, what do you see? Because he was around since before there was actually online trading. He was, in the actual pits. And he goes, you know what? He goes, what's going on now? There's a lot of people who are really interested, especially institutional money, because we get calls every single day, he said. He goes, it's coming. The problem is the regulation. And now we hear the same thing being iterated by SBF. So when I take a look at that, I'm like, that's pretty good. But again, you're right. The SEC's not going to allow it. Gensler's he's on a war path. He's like, no, we're not going to do it. And that's just how it is. However, there is a couple things. There's one thing that keeps me hopeful. We cover this today on the show. There's a bill going through Congress right now, and it was bipartisanship. It was Republican representatives and Democratic. Thompson, Emmer, Minnesota, Soto, Florida, and Ro Khanna of California. And what they want to do is they want to shift the regulation entity from SEC over to the CFTC for all the crypto exchanges. And if they can do that, then the SEC can say, okay, they can just lay down and go, fine, you guys, the CFTC can do it, and label these things as commodities, make the exchanges go through and say, yes, they're commodities, which is a lot better than them coming through as being securities, which I believe they are. And what you just said, James, in the beginning, was you said about Bitcoin and Ethereum. Those are totally commodities, just like gold. If Bitcoin is gold 2.0, let the CFTC regulate, let the exchanges go in there, and then they can say, okay, now you have your clarity. This is what it is. Come on, institutions. That's what we need. That's just my 2 cents.
Very strong words for you there. I think I got a beam of lightning right through me. Anyway, moving on. Excuse that. Ben, how about you? What do you see?
I think the light behind you is just your Bitcoin halo or something. Um, I think that, look, I think that, yeah, there's a lot of money that would like to come in, but I don't think they have the ability to come in yet. I think that it'll be first approved for Bitcoin before anything else, including Ethereum. I just think Bitcoin it's the it's just the more obvious one. It'd probably be the easiest one to get approved, and that's why, I say, and I think, James, you've said it too as well, is, if you're thinking about your crypto portfolio, you should probably think about them in, like, you have your Bitcoin position in
Yeah.
one basket, and then you have everything else in another basket. Maybe Ethereum is somewhere in between, probably closer to Bitcoin than the altcoins, in my opinion. But I still would say, like, Bitcoin it's been number one, right? Since it's been around. I mean, nothing has overtaken it. I don't think anything will overtake it anytime soon. So, whenever those regulations do get passed, and people actually have sort of the green light to go invest in Bitcoin, whether it be a spot ETF, whatever it ends up being, right? Um, that is where you would want to be. And remember that Bitcoin rallies usually precede altcoin rallies, right? It was the rally by Bitcoin in late 2020 that led to the altcoin rally that came after, and early 2021 that led to the altcoin rally that came after it. But I would say Bitcoin is I mean, it'll probably get approved at some point. I mean, there's just going to be too much, I think, demand for it for them to ignore it forever. I do think Ethereum will eventually be approved, and actually longer term, I do think there's a good chance we'll see altcoin approvals as well. But it's going to be a lot harder, especially the nature of the altcoin. Um, there's already been a lot of legal battles related with the SEC and various projects. So I think we're a lot further away from altcoins being approved. But Bitcoin should be the first one. I hope. I mean, again, I hope it's within the next year or so. But I also was hoping that in 2017, and now we're in 2022, and it still hasn't happened. So Bitcoin first, and other things will eventually follow.
I agree with that.
Figure out some lighting here. So I'm sitting down now for the first time. So that was big news. The other big news we had as well was Fidelity, the Fidelity 401k news. Obviously, by my rough calculations, if people who have a 401k in the United States alone put just 2% of their money into Bitcoin, that would result in an additional 120k on the price of Bitcoin as we go forward. I thought that was huge news. It came out as being criticized by some labor union somewhere, that is too risky, etc. But there was another study out as well about the actual adoption. Most people have come into the cryptoverse, to use your term, literally over the last 12 months as well. So they got a rude awakening for all the newcomers that have come in. But Ben, to you first. Have you looked at the Fidelity news and other adoption news as you go forward, and what do you think of what's going on there?
Yeah, I've looked at it a little bit, and I mean, like the thing we talked about, it's going to lead to more money coming into the space. It'll likely lead to Bitcoin's price ultimately trending higher. But we always have to remember one thing with Bitcoin's price is that it trends higher over time, but it goes through phases of undervaluation and overvaluation. Okay, so sometimes it's grossly undervalued, and it's so undervalued to the point that it just doesn't make sense. And then other times it gets overvalued to the point where it also doesn't make sense. Like when it goes from like 4,000 to 64,000 in a year without really spending any time at some of the lower levels, we're now paying the price for that. So all the adoption news that you're seeing, I think it's going to fundamentally help support the next bull market. But I don't think the next bull market will occur just because of some news. I think it'll occur when overall markets, including equity markets, go back to being risk on. Until then, people are just going to be scared, and they're not going to know where to put their money. Again, bear markets are really where you would like to have the most resolve and to look at the long term. But yeah, it's a great foundation. All these things, the adoption by, the Fidelity 401k is one thing, right? We've seen tons of good news over the last few months. We've talked about them a lot on this channel. We're sort of building out the base as to what will ultimately, I think, shoot us off into the next bull run. But until until the dollar calms down, until the Fed probably pivots, we're still likely remaining risk off in the short term. And then eventually we'll go back to risk on, and it will be all of these things, I think, that help send us to the next paradigm shift in the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah. And then, James, let me just take this one. What I said something on Twitter. I posted something about the news about the Central African Republic, how they came in and they created or made Bitcoin legal tender, and of course the market dropped. And I said, yeah, did everybody get the memo that this just happened? But it seemed like the market drops. Then Ben on Twitter goes, it seems like the news is not important. And you know what? He's right, because in the bear markets, any good news is inert. It's like it does absolutely nothing. But any bad news is like gas in the fire. And I think the inverse is actually true too. When you're in the bull market, anything that's good, even mildly good, is like gas in the fire, and then it blows up. And that's, I think, where we're at right now. Because we're in a bear market, I believe, I think that it doesn't matter, the actual good news, because it's like, who cares? And then one thing that I would say about that with Fidelity, if we talked about this a couple of days ago when it came out, and we took a look at some data from the Investment Company Institute. They're the ones that have like trillions and for assets for retirements. The report they came out said that there's 39.4 trillion of retirement assets in the United States in the fourth quarter of 2021. $39.4 trillion. So as like these different devices come out and people are actually able to invest into it and put Bitcoin, it just locks Bitcoin up. It's the same thing that we talk about with iTrust. So if I see this, it's great news, but does it move the needle? Not really at all. And then the last thing I will say, though, is that I use Ben's website a lot, Into the Cryptoverse, and he was talking about fair value just now. You know, the fair value that for the total market cap logarithmic is like 1.5 trillion. That's what it should be. 1.5. That's like fair value. And then the upper band, you're looking at 9.5. But if you go out just a couple of years, so we're actually above the fair market value. But if you go out a couple of years, you know, the fair market value is like 4 trillion in 2024, or in 2 years. And in 2025, it's 9 trillion. That's the fair value. So I know, like, we talk about how much it sucks now, but if you just look at that chart, it gives me hope. Like, well, we're above fair value now and the market's sucking. So in 2 years, the fair value is roughly 6 trillion. That's the fair value. So what if we're above that? So what, we 3, 4, 5x? I'll take that. I got time.
Yeah, that's definitely, and this leads us to our next point as well. You know, what I refer to sometimes as Dominos Falling. Here you have the news of, obviously, El Salvador last year, a little bit of Madeira, and a few other random small little economic zones within certain countries. You got the Central African spot, and Panama just yesterday, not approving Bitcoin as legal tender, but making it a tax-free zone to generate unemployment and technology investments and everything else. And it seems like the dominoes are falling faster. It seems like the fiat world is imploding. The ECB is already completely defunct. There was a great article about how many believe European countries in the next 6 to 8 years will go back to their original currencies. Kind of like what the Scandinavian countries have done, the British pound has done, but you'll have the Deutschmark coming back, etc., as the whole euro system implodes. And that could be part of what the WF is talking about, a great reset. But these smaller countries that are beholden to other areas are really looking to Bitcoin as a safe haven. So, Ben, to you first, what do you think about all of this and these dominoes? And again, the news is inert. It was very eloquent words from Rob there. It's like nothing matters in a bear market. What do you believe, like a forecast 12 months out? Do you see another 10 countries adopting Bitcoin or more?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that to some degree, it seems like the countries that are the first ones that are adopting it are probably the ones that need Bitcoin the most. And because I know some people have said, well, how come we're not seeing other larger countries do it? Well, I mean, necessity is something that I think that is important to consider. And so you have some smaller countries doing it first. It'll likely lead to larger countries doing it eventually. Within a year, will there be 10 more countries? Oh, gosh, I don't know. I have a hard time predicting these things. I might say there might be, maybe 2 to 3 more, maybe 5. I don't know. But I mean, Rob is right. Like, I mean, it is right. It's true that during a risk off time, the news doesn't matter, right? It kind of sucks, but it's like in a bull market, no one cares about the bad news, and in a bear market, no one cares about the good news. But I'm telling you, it's these things that will ultimately send us to the next level whenever we go back to the sun, right? It's just that because we remain risk off, no one really cares. So I do think that, yeah, like we'll see some more countries come. One data point could be a fluke, but two makes it a trend, right? And if you see 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, right, you're seeing a trend occur, and there's just going to be more and more pressure, I think, on other countries eventually to follow suit. And yeah, I mean, it'll be what sends us to the next level. If you think about 2021, it was all about institutions, right? And really, there's still a lot of institutions that haven't even touched Bitcoin because of the regulation issues. We need more money to get to 6 figures, right? We need more money to come into the space. That money, you can see it coming through 401ks. You can see it coming through more institutions when we get regulation, and you can also see it potentially coming through small countries. Which we've already seen with El Salvador already. So yeah, I think we're building out the framework for a future rally, but right now we remain this way.
And they are very small, but you're right. That whole game theory is just fascinating, and there will come a day. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't know if it's 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 8 years from now, when there will just be like a nuclear arms race to get your hands on just a little bit of Bitcoin and stick it on your reserve balance sheet or whatever the case may be. And that's exciting, and that's why I think we're all in this game. That's why I do what I do, and that's why I go to bed at night excited. This turbulence doesn't bother me at all. And in fact, if we look at the chart, we're back at where we were 2 days ago. It's like, it's as usual. But people are just, I think it's the combination of every asset class is getting hammered right now, whether it's gold or equities or bonds or whatever. It's like fiat has become the safe haven again, but it's illogical. So, Rob, tell us about your view of Dominos, and are you excited by this news or other oncoming news?
Yeah, because it was, and we actually, I talked about this. It was, they're not going to go legal tender in Panama, but they're going to mean that if you move there, there's no taxes on capital gains, which I think, I mean, the same thing is why I live in Puerto Rico. I think you're going to see different locations and places. I think they'll probably move in that direction first because it's an economic boom for that location. There's a reason why Puerto Rico has low taxes. It's because they're trying to attract these different individuals, investors, corporations to move there so it can be an economic stimulus. And it's the same thing with Panama. They can do the same thing and go, okay, we want to have people who have money to come in here to help boost our infrastructure and things like that with the capital they bring. So like Ben said, it's a dominoes effect, and it's one is just an outlier and two is a trend. But I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I will say I thought that something like city coins would be more of an issue or more of a direction where cities would go, like what Miami did, Mayor Suarez, like what New York did, which was to allow Bitcoin to be bought up and actually used and to pay for taxes and things like that. Yeah. I thought that would be the next more likely direction, but we'll see. Maybe we just jump over that and just go right to no tender. Who knows?
Awesome, good stuff. Let me pull this up, and I think for some reason I can't get out of this sun thing. Anyway, next question is the Fed meeting next week. What everybody's actually worried about right now. Obviously, the market's very good at factoring in things. Whether everybody's talking about 50 basis points, but do you guys think it could surprise and make it 75 basis points and really rattle the markets, or it's a very edge case, but because the markets are so beaten up, and I can't help thinking about, okay, it's an election year, U.S. elections are in November. People's pension funds, retirement funds they depend on are destroyed right now, hit really hard. Inflation is crushing the cost of living. What would you do if you were Biden? You get on the phone to JP and say, hey, JP, just 25 basis points. We need the markets back up again. Because that's exactly what Trump did before. He was like kind of gassing the stock markets because he knew it would have an impact on elections. and you're our political expert here, Rob. So
That's not
jump
good. That's
jump
not good
in,
if I'm the expert.
jump in. What would you do?
Well, I think we all know that there's the way that things move is deals behind closed doors. I think we can all agree there, right? So would it surprise me if he did that? No, not at all. But I will say this: the way that Jerome Powell has come out and he has, in his last speech, I forgot where he was speaking at, but he incited Volcker, and he talked about how great Volcker was during the late 70s, early 80s, when he increased rates above 14, I think it was 14.5% or more. Or no, I think it was like 20%. And actually inflation was 14.5%. And it's what avoided a huge economic crash for what he talked about. So my thinking is this, two things. First of all, I know we always talk about how it's priced in. I think it's priced in for the people who pay attention and know what's going on. They're like, okay, I get this is happening. I think there's a lot of people that don't. And then they hear these news like, what the hell just happened? And then all of a sudden you start selling off, and then you get bots picking up, and then before you know it's a cascade effect. So there's that part. And the second thing is, I think with Powell, I think if he just says, hey, I want to leave a legacy and not, bury the country into the ground, maybe I have to be that hard ass and really drive things down for things to actually come out on the other side in a better way, the same way Volcker did. I think that's what really concerns me. But again, we'll only see. We got May, 3rd or 4th, June, middle of June, and July. And I think around all those times, you're going to see crypto, S&P 500, and the NASDAQ dip. And then if it comes back or not, it just depends. But the real question is, what are you guys going to do when those things dip? I've got a plan. I just got to put that into action.
Hang on a second. I'll mute myself, and I'm trying to juggle a few balls here. We had a cool question. So, Ben, what do you think about the Fed meeting next week? And I just think Jerome has a habit of not rattling markets, so I think he will do the right thing and just do 50. I think also because consumer confidence is in the tank, inflation is already well in control. People aren't buying stuff anymore at all. The economy has ground to a halt. You saw that with the GDP shrinking by 1.4%, and we ain't seen nothing yet. It will be 2 quarters. I think we're already in a recession, and the markets recover before the recession recovers because everybody kind of front runs everything. So what's your take on next week?
I don't think he'll do any higher than 50. I think 50 is the max he would go. I mean, he probably should do 50, just to save face a little bit. But I can tell you what I would do. I mean, if I were in the situation of some of the politicians that want to get reelected, there's 2 things I think that really cause people to not favor the incumbent. One of those is high inflation because it's just really hard on everyone to deal with. But another thing I think is the economy in general and markets, right? You want people to feel good, right? And I think what is the most likely scenario is to continue to put on the sort of the face that we are fighting inflation through interest rate hikes. But it could just be that the interest rate hikes won't really have as much of an effect as they might want. But it could just be that a bear market and just a slowing economy leads to inflation coming down rather than necessarily the interest rate hikes. But it's probably a combination of everything. So you do that for a few months. People are obviously not going to feel great about it because it's going to put downward pressure on markets as everything remains risk off. But then as you get closer to election time, and if the U.S. is in a recession, then the Fed could then pivot and say, well, we're not going to keep doing this into a recession. And if you think about it from a political standpoint, if inflation is at least optically under control, and you can start to have markets move back up again and at least make it seem like things look okay, then I could see the Fed pivoting later this year before, maybe sometime around the election time. Because again, like crypto investors, we're a fickle bunch, right? The market could be down 90%, but as I've said before, as long as it goes up 5% next week, everyone's happy again. So from a sentiment perspective, if markets dip for a few months and then going into elections, the Fed pivots and they're not quite as hawkish as they have been, then it might lead to better retail or just better consumer sentiment in general, which is probably what they want. So that way, it gives the facade, or at least that they're fighting inflation, and then maybe people will also be happy at the time if the markets are turning up in November.
Yeah, we got three meetings to go to. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and always remember, every time they increase by 25 basis points, they reduce GDP. It's a no-win. They're screwed if they do, screwed if they don't. And that's what people need to realize. Okay, with that, everybody, we've gone for over half an hour now. We're going to do a couple of audience questions, and we have some interesting ones. The first one is from Master Block Warrior. This is incredible. I was distracted because I was actually running these numbers through a model to calculator for fun, and I did it, and I have the answer. But he asks, if Bitcoin hits $1 billion by 2038 per Fidelity's target, speaking of Fidelity again, how much would $100 be worth in today's purchasing power? First question. What do you guys think? Well, should I repeat that one again?
No, go ahead.
So if Bitcoin hits $1 billion by 2038 per Fidelity's target, how much would $100 be worth in relative purchasing power for that to happen?
Oh, I mean, if you're talking about $1 billion per one Bitcoin, is that what he's saying?
Yeah.
Are we even using US dollars at this point?
Yeah.
If everyone's a billionaire, then no one is.
Exactly. So
No,
I can say that the models that I have for 2038 put Bitcoin closer to 1 million, not a billion.
Yeah. So I'm easily at $1 million by, well, 800,000 to 1 million by 2030. So that should be easily achieved. But I did run some numbers for Master Block Warrior. It's such a good question. So first of all, the first question: $100 in 2038 will be worth about $6.50. So it'll be 93.5% debased from where it is today. Second thing, for Bitcoin to get to $1 billion, it takes exactly annual average appreciation of only 88% over the next, whatever many years that is, 16 years. So 88% per year compound annual growth rate will take us to $1 billion. But the value of that Bitcoin in 2038 in US dollar terms is only $75 million, not $1 billion in real purchasing power. So that's what I thought that was interesting. Next question, also from Master Block Warrior. If you guys could have dinner with a historical figure, who would that figure be? Ben, you first.
A historical figure? Like, is there any? Are there any
Nope.
caveats to that, or
Any historical figure, dinner for two.
That's a good question. Let me think about that for a minute. I mean,
Rob, over to you.
honest, I mean, like if I'm just thinking about crypto related, I wouldn't mind meeting Stoicism.
That's a good one.
I mean, I mean that's sort of like the easy answer, but I think that would be a great person to meet. Going back further than that, I mean, there's a lot of people that I sort of like grew up, somewhat idolizing, and like it would have been cool to have met that. Like, I mean, like Stephen Hawking was an example of someone, because my background is physics, mathematics, engineering, and stuff. It's like these are the people that I grew up, sort of admiring, and that would be someone, from the past. I mean, again, we only lost him a few years ago, but still technically a historical figure that I would like to have dinner with.
Over to you, Rob.
Pretty good. I've always been fascinated with the Stoics, like Seneca and those types of philosophers. If I had to go all the way back, if I can understand, I'd like to talk to those great figures and see where that mentality comes from. Because Stoicism is just the ability just to filter out all the different emotions that are out there and just find your one true path. And I think once people do that, I believe that's one of those paths to greatness. So if I had to pick anybody, it would be that was a very ancient going back in time.
Okay, so next question is a tricky one. It's called diametric opposition. Any news on Z2 GOX creditors? Jumped through all the hoops. Last message was February. You guys tracking the GOX creditors? Z2 GOX creditors?
I'm not.
How about you, Ben?
No, I mean, I haven't really been tracking it. I mean, that's something that's been in the news or I mean, just stocks in general has been in the news forever. But I don't really track it that closely because it doesn't really affect me that much.
Yeah, and it shouldn't affect Bitcoin price too much as well. So hopefully not too much depth on that one. So next question is Miggy2J. What are each of your top 3 layer 1 projects? I'll go to you first, Rob.
Oh, I mean, it's if Ethereum could ever get everything moving to actually go to make that jump, that merge ETH 2.0, I think it'll do quite well. And not only does it have to do that, but even with the upcoming merger that is supposed to happen and will be delayed, maybe July, August, September, that won't do anything with the fees. I hope everybody understands that. So, I mean, just with the ability for it to get in there and actually have the market, just the first mover advantage, that's why I like Ethereum a good deal. Also, I like Avalanche. I think it'll do well, just depending on how much of the market share it will do. Solana, I mean, we'll see how it can go. Although I thought it was very odd, very interesting that one of the founder, Anatoly, I forgot his last name, said that Bitcoin should get out of proof of work, and if they don't, no one will use it. I found that very odd. And then take your pick between Cardano or Phantom or something like that. So those top 3 right now, unless somebody shows me something different, Ethereum and Avalanche and Solana.
Awesome, nice work. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum for sure. I think Ethereum is by far the best one. I don't even think the other one's come close to it at the current time. I know that one's going to give me some flack for saying that. I think Ethereum is hands down the best one. I also, I really highly value. Maybe you should mute your mic.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I really value in general, I really value decentralization. As you know, it's just a game between decentralization, scalability, and security. And so, going into this cycle, my top 3, or maybe I should say top 4, because Ethereum is the easy answer, right? Ethereum is the easy answer. But beyond that, I would say Avalanche, Cardano, and Polkadot are were the main 3 that I had going into this cycle. I think there are some other ones that are good. It's hard to ignore. Terra Luna. I mean, it's hard to ignore these things when they are literally buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. Some of the projects like Luna and Solana. It's not that I necessarily don't like them. It's just that I was late to the game on them, if that makes sense, right? So it's easier to focus on the projects that you actually were early on, rather than the ones you were late on. So I think I think those are the main ones. There are definitely a lot that I don't really care for as much. I'm not going to necessarily list those, but I would say going into the cycle is Cardano, Polkadot, Ethereum, and Avalanche, and then next cycle, or the next time we go up, I'll probably have allocations in a couple of the others, or at least larger allocations in them.
Excellent. And from my perspective, just so we wrap it out, representative of my holdings, it's Ethereum first, Solana second, and Luna will be third. And that's where I am right now. So let me check. I think there might be one more question. Sorry about all the background noise. Yes, from Super Trooper, at what price point for MicroStrategy will you be concerned for your huge SL position? And that is a very simple answer, between $290 and $300. Then I start getting nervous. So that's when I probably would have to close out the put that I sold. But I'd hold the call because, paid for it out to 2024. I'm still very bullish long term. These are just short term hits in the marketplace. And it goes back to how far could Bitcoin fall down. I mean, we had everything thrown at it in January, February 24th, and it fell to first 35K, then to 37K. We still have that higher low thing holding place. And people are still looking for places to put money. And there's very few places. And if people are looking at fiat and not buying Bitcoin at this price, then I can't help them. That's just my take. So we'll see. And just short-term undulations in the market. So that's it for the questions, everybody. Don't forget as well, if you haven't subscribed to Ben and Rob below, the links are directly below in the details. So any final thoughts from you guys as we wrap here?
Yeah, just hang in there. I know if it's if you think it's tough, and of course no one said it was going to be easy, but when you're going through hell, just keep going, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. It just may not be as fast as you want it to be, but it will be there at some point.
Sound advice. Ben, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, like, these market conditions are awful. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. It just is what it is. It's reminiscent of prior downtrends. It sucks. We've all been through it, but if you can stick it out, then you'll be the person everyone else is saying is lucky whenever we have another bull run. So, just remember, if you joined in 2021 and it didn't go that well for you because you came in late, try something different, right? Try staying around when the market isn't so great, and then be patient and wait for it to go back up. I mean, in the short term, I don't really see anything changing, but maybe as I was saying earlier, when the Fed pivots and we go back to risk on, that's what I would be looking for.
Exactly. So everybody's kind of like, we always knew there'd be dark clouds, but so many hitting at the same time. Now we're technically recession-y. There's nothing we can do there. Just hang tight, everybody. And I still believe the future is very bright right now, but it's very difficult to say that right now. But also, from a perspective, I think Bitcoin is holding very strong compared to other asset classes. Like, I hold Amazon, and that got hit hard today.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely smashed. Not as bad as Netflix or anything else, but for an asset that has a 21 stock split coming, and you can now see it at this, Anyway, we'll see. We'll see where it all goes. But I want to thank you both, and thank you to the audience. Sorry about the background noise, everybody. I am in transit right now and struggling to find a window with electricity and internet for these guys. But thank you both as well. Happy Friday, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Adios, everybody.
Adios.